Support Narrative's independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative and check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe and download. Breitbart was the main vehicle for carrying all of the WikiLeaks leaks with the administration's point of view, because Bannon was at the time, I think, still the publisher, or at least had a podcast on Breitbart, because he was the co-owner, I think, of it with the Mercers. The Mercers owned it, and then they also owned Cambridge Analytica, which was convenient because they could
Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah, they could
Cambridge.
Mess
Nothing
with
to do
people's.
with Russian intelligence services. Nothing.
No, nothing. I mean, there was that Russian spy guy that was involved from Cambridge, but nothing other than that.
Not as successors or affiliated companies. Nothing to do with IRS at all.
Nothing. No. It's just an independent company that, in his spare time, he was able to figure out how to fuck with people's minds, and he did it very successfully. He was able to rig the entire system because he's that kind of talented, obviously.
He's amazing. But Kim Jong-un, every day it's something new and miraculous that goes on with this guy.
Yep. He's super talented.
I don't think we've ever seen
his ice dancing team.
I think he's missing the horseback riding. Don't they always end up on a horse, these guys?
Can you imagine?
No shirt on.
Sure.
That's what I'm doing right after this. I'm going to go horseback riding without a shirt on.
In the
I'll
mountains.
see you out there, bro.
And Putin will
find
be there
some
too.
mountains, and they're all mine.
Total alpha man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Then he's Trump's campaign manager.
Right, and so in
Paul Manafort is mixing it up with Russian intelligence, and he had to go. And it comes
something interesting I found in the intelligence
the coveted
report.
polling data somehow finds its way into GRU hands. It's
just some polling data publicly available.
So covered polling data. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is new, and I found this fascinating. It comes out of the Senate Intelligence Reporting. So in April and May 2016, Roger Stone called Rick Gates 67 times, Paul Manafort 64 times, Eric Prince 67 times, and Steve Bannon, who wasn't even yet part of the campaign, several times. This was all around the time that they were releasing all the WikiLeaks stuff. So, if there was coordination, maybe in these 67, 64, 67 phone calls, that coordination would have happened.
Is that a pattern, Mr. Laufer? You do
a pattern in practice
stuff?
I mean, they just might be really good friends and, sharing makeup tips and hairstyle.
We'd have some detail about what they did. Let me see if I can pull some up here. So apparently in one conversation, this is on October 3rd, Bannon told Eric Prince, did you even know that Eric Prince and Steve Bannon was so close? I didn't know that. A little bit from Mueller, but this was interesting. Bannon had spoken to his friend in London last night, often euphemism for Julian Assange. The payload is still coming.
Payload.
So Bannon knows all about the Assange bomb as well, not just Stone.
Apparently Stone was the main contact, but it seems like Bannon is read into it, and so is Eric Prince. Who would have thunk that Eric Prince would have been read into the same thing as well? And he's just a donor to the campaign. He's not even a member of the campaign staff. And so, that's interesting. The conversation goes like this. So then on October 4th, when the payload didn't arrive, I guess there was a payload that was coming, the payload didn't show up.
And I hate when my payloads don't show up.
Oh, no, you want your payloads.
Horrible.
I'm not touching
payload doesn't learn.
Don't go there. And he says, what was this? What was that this morning? I guess when the payload didn't show up. I mean, so God knows what they're talking about there. So Stone responds, fear, serious security concern. He, meaning Assange, thinks they are going to kill him, and the London police are standing done. I think he means down. However, a load every week coming forward. So there's loads. They're coming.
They got to think about baseball more.
Caravans and the payloads. You got to watch out for them.
I am insulted. I want to explain this a little bit. Just much like when the mobsters are using their very own Title III intercept machine to blather on WhatsApp and whatnot. Like the FBI's like, thank you, that was easy. I'm insulted for my Italian forebears who, kept using some old dialect, and even then went out in the park, not near something electric, and spoke in code. Even then, I'm insulted on spook for just spook tradecraft. It's like, it's supposed to be, oh, I heard you're going on the vacation to Florida. That's so great. Yeah, but I'm worried that the flight's not going to show up on time. No, I think it'll show up on time. You're supposed to have a different goddamn topic to hide. Like, I talked to the guy in London, the guy from Australia with the spy thing we're doing. But the spy thing didn't happen last night. No, they think they might kill him because he's a spy. Like, what the? How is it involved?
Eric, I blame it on high fructose corn syrup and stupidity. That's why that happens.
You mentioned
I've read this on eating lead paint chips when you're a kid. These handlers in Russia.
Sure.
You mentioned WhatsApp because it does come up here in exactly that context. Because Prince then tells Stone that later on that day, hey, did Assange chicken out? And then Stone is like, not sure. I'll just check. Did you hear from London? He then asks later on, and as Stone says, want to talk on a secure line? Got WhatsApp?
This was in the Senate Intel. We missed it.
This is in Volume 5. I don't know why Comey didn't have it. I mean, it's like, got WhatsApp?
They're in the backyard of GCHQ. They're like, the whole entire London neighborhood around these idiots is just one large SIGINT collection device. And they're like, want to talk on WhatsApp? It'll be secure. I can't do these people. Zuckerberg owns it, and he's a genius. I can't.
They're like in Harrods enjoying some cocktails. Right, like they're because it's right there.
It's right there.
You're just like listening like this. Everyone thinks they're on their cell phones, but they're just listening.
But these guys weren't even pretending to hide this. I mean, they just weren't even. They were just. I don't know what they're doing, but
I mean, in all honesty, Zev, you can't really blame them. I mean, stupidity has that effect on people. They just, they're stupid.
But why? How did this not register with Mueller as a conspiracy or collusion? I still struggle with this because it looks to me like it's kind of obvious. I mean, it's not like
I think it did.
I think it did. I think we kind of had some people interrupt Mueller. Unfortunately, I don't know. My personal opinion is I don't think we've heard the last of the Mueller investigation and what may have transpired or grown out of it.
Well, we certainly are seeing the. So go ahead.
Talk a little bit about that, Andrew, of like, what is it about these grand juries? They're still ongoing. I know this seems like we're boiling everything. I always like to boil everything down to the basics for everybody because we're all under such, mental stress and attack. It's sort of like just the basics of why we might not know any of this or it's not penetrated. Like what happens with grand juries and these investigations?
Well, grand juries have been around for a very long time, hundreds and hundreds of years. Go back to different types of and forms of it, from the Magna Carta. So basically, what a grand jury is a secretive, grouping of people who come in to determine whether or not, after reviewing evidence for a prosecutor, that a crime, there was probable cause for possibly a crime being committed. And as I said, it's secretive. The identifications of grand jurors are private and coveted, and you can't get any of that information, nor should you. There's just I remember, I forgot who, I don't know if it was Caputo or some of the other Trumpers were trying some insane argument about negating the power of the grand jury. It was some crazy thing that they put up, in DC circuit. It just had no shot in hell of working. But essentially that's what it is. For serious crimes, grand juries are the ones that make the determination, for the most part, whether or not charges should be leveled against an individual. I mean, you can have a law enforcement officer still charge someone, with a criminal complaint, but grand juries really are sacrosanct, and that's their job.
And they should be, right? I mean,
how long can they go on? in terms of things being redacted, because this might be part of an ongoing
investigation. Correct. And it needs to
and
be.
the always convene. It can always come back together to hear more on that case, or how does that work?
What'll happen is grand juries usually sit for, I think it's about 18 months. Okay. And they may hear many different cases. If it's a complex case, they may just focus on one. The reason why a lot of times you may have redactions and things of that nature is because there already may be sealed indictments. The grand jury may have been completed and they have already chosen to indict. And that particular bit of information is part of that sealed indictment, and they don't want to disclose that information, until they unseal. There's a number of different, that's primarily the reason why, it's frustrating. I know. We want to get at it. We want to see Trump's tax returns. We want to know that we're sticking it to Russia or China, from an intelligence perspective. But obviously, for the same reason, we don't want to disclose sources and methods in intelligence situations. And in legal situations, you don't want to disclose how a prosecutor may be going after a bad guy. What information they have, because then it may lead to spoliation of evidence. They may destroy evidence. They may stop doing what they're doing and close up shop, and that may kill a case. So there's some real world.
How long can an indictment be sealed? So a sealed indictment means the person on the other side of it doesn't even know they've been indicted, right?
Correct. Yes.
It's sort of
not all the time. They can know.
Evidence or other individuals, or they're deciding why. Why are they waiting? Why would one wait? Why would a prosecutor wait? How long would a sealed indictment sit there that came out of a grand jury?
It could be any number of different reasons. A lot of times that people are subject of a grand jury or a law enforcement investigation will receive a target letter from that law enforcement, from the FBI or whatever. If their phones are tapped, sometimes when the tapping is over, they'll send a letter to the individuals whose phones were tapped. Any number, they could still be building the case. These could be low-level operatives that they're, like we're dealing with Bannon and Prince and all these other guys. They're really low-level, they're the public face of really the powerful people behind them that are really pulling the strings here. So when they get these lower-level guys, they want to get to the top. They want to build a case. It may be a RICO case. You don't know what type of thing the prosecutor may be working on, which is really why it could take a long time to really build these cases.
And would they show?
I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. I'm going to stop talking.
No, it's good. It's good stuff.
I love this.
Man. We need to know this.
So, and then would they show an indictment maybe to the person who's indicted and say, "This is now what we're going to enact against you, unless you can help us"? Is that how they roll up? Do they use the indictment?
They can. They may not necessarily. I'm sorry, LB, if you want to finish, I apologize.
No, that's it. I just wanted to hear that from you.
They can. There are many different ways that law enforcement would go, like the FBI would go at someone. They may not show them an indictment per se. They may just show them evidence that they have. They may play a recording. They may say this. They may say that. To kind of, if they want to flip someone, say, look, we've got all this juice on you. We'll do this plea agreement here, and we'll waive all these, crimes if you testify on our behalf against X, Y, and Z. And if they're smart,
they take
the
deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when they take the deal, is it recorded? Do they sign their name?
In terms of the agreement? Yeah, they will actually sign a plea agreement that has to be approved by the court. The court will have to say, okay, this is reasonable and fair, and they'll allocute the guilty plea on the record to make sure they'll ask you weren't intoxicated in any way at the time that you executed this, things of that nature. So they'll lay it all out there for to preserve the person who's pleading guilty their constitutional rights, which is what they should do. Right. This is what Flynn is dealing with right now, and he's not getting out of anything, in my opinion. So, but
who do you think? Who do you think whose plea agreement do you think you might be around? It could be interesting to look at.
I think it's important for people to understand the process and the history of this. And there are kinds of agreements that happen to turn people. When Andy says flip, he means you're turning someone into a cooperating witness, right? And so there are deals where those don't get seen. So part of it is that actually also gets kept private, kept under seal.
So when do
and those
include
cooperating agreements can last for decades. These people go into WIPRO, or they go into protective custody, and they're just constantly feeding, and they may still be acting in their capacity as a bad guy.
Yeah.
Like Whitey Bulger, for example,
still criming and profiting off that crime.
But my point is, there's paper.
There's paper. Yeah. There's paper. I know who you're talking about.
It's really good paper. It's great, heavy, laden paper that these things are written on.
There was some superseding indictments actually unveiled in court in London a few weeks ago regarding Julian Assange, because we're not quite sure what they are, but we know that they were.
Sad, I mean, the guy was just trying to report the news, and it's
just a journalist out there working hard.
I mean, espionage journalism, it's the same thing, right?
It is basically the same thing. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the whole thing.
It's
I can't stand these guys. I'm sorry. It's a little personal opinion there, but whatever.
This is just awful. And actually, I will say that it's really dangerous for journalists. The more journalists get discredited like this and get attached to these intelligence organizations, the harder it is to go and do the actual work out there, like reporting. I mean, in the United States, it's still fairly safe to do it, but in other parts of the world, journalists need to be seen as independent. You can't suddenly fake them as claim your intelligence assets are journalists, because journalists will die because of that. Someone's going to make that mistake.
Right. In general, journalists like to live. They don't like
generally
or go to jail or die.
We like to report the news.
Exactly. Look at Russia. What's happened. I mean, you have a number of journalists that have stood up to the Putin regime, and they end up not so good. Not so well. I don't even think there's opposition journalism at all. People that try to stand up in China, they don't last very long there.
No, they don't. They get, in fact, in China, they get locked into this digital prison where they can't do anything. They get completely isolated from the world, but because they get cut off from every digital access point.
And if their organs are fresh, there's always that aspect too.
So that's the stuff that really upsets me aside from the fact that it's the worst espionage in the world. But
I don't mean to be pithy about it, but it's really, it's horrible.
Yeah, it's horrible. A lot of collateral damage.
And this is why I'm very angry as a citizen with how the Fourth Estate in the United States handled this entire situation for the last 4 or 5 years, because they are given protections that are very broad, and they have a lot of responsibility, and they are not in the situation that the journalists in Ukraine and Belarus and Russia and China are, where to tell the truth will get you killed, acid thrown in your face, your family beaten, real consequences. These people were afraid in many cases to not get invited to fucking dinner parties. Partly because they didn't want to be too crazy things. Some, not saying everybody, but there's plenty of people who didn't want to sound crazy, and they attacked people. And because a bunch of us were on that crew, they attacked people who said what is now, as of this week, out plain as day. These were intelligence operations. This was to attack the United States. They were broad-reaching, and for anyone who even dared break away from the Hillary Buttery Mails narrative, you got attacked. In some cases, your career got attacked, your family got targeted, and that was from the people that were supposed to be fighting for freedom. And then in other countries, those people were willing to die for the chance to potentially be like this country, and our own media threw that gift in the trash in the last 4
needs a lot of work. What happened with the news industry, and it's an industry, so that's the troubling part of it. Probably from the very beginning is that it's still considered a business. But the layers of there are ways in a news organization that stories get killed, and it often gets killed. It goes up to legal and stays up in legal forever and never comes back down, or suddenly the lawyer is picking apart every tiny little sentence that you've got there. And you're thinking, well, why this story? And then you realize that the story is being killed slowly through the legal department, or through an editor saying, well, that's a really controversial story, so we're going to need more evidence. Why don't you go back and do another 6 weeks of work on this until we have real proof that, that Trump is a Russian asset, or whatever, when it was pretty obvious to everybody this is what was going on. that's the kind of like slow death the story goes through sometimes in news organizations. And there's nothing you can do about it because they're all private entities owned by a lot of the same, the same people who are, subsidiaries of Russian. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to say what I'm saying.
Well, it's about money.
Yeah, it's about money. It's about money.
It's about money. I think it's also this, we're all having to navigate this very careful space of, you don't want to push the fake news thing, yet we have a failure of journalism. We have journalism malpractice happening all over the place. And it does seem to be about the corporate mercenary aspect of what news is now, right? That's a term that Melissa Jo Peltier, who we all love so much, she's a great account. I just love her.
Yeah, she's terrific.
Wonderful person too. But I hadn't heard that phrase used quite like that. She used it, I think, this week. It's like, because they're...
Which one?
It's news is mercenary now, the corporate mercenaries, right? That's the, that it felt really right? So it's not that it's not about the fakeness of anything, because there's just such amazing journalism that is happening right now, better than it's ever happened ever in our history.
Right, there is terrific, and lots of great reporters doing great work all the time.
Right? Yeah. But also this corporate mercenary structure going on, we all saw that, and some of them just said it right from the very beginning of like, Les Moonves says, great for CBS, Trump is great for us, so. What are we gonna do?
I mean, I've had a couple of stories killed in my life that based on just someone's corporate agenda, and it's
throwing the safety of our nation under the bus for a bottom line. It really it's offensive.
It's sick, and I think the thing is the loop that we've all been in is that we have needed somebody to articulate the stakes. We're always looking for other people to articulate the stakes. It's never been the people ourselves. Like, we're all independent voices. Andy's lawyer, we kind of found each other at the same time. Where I remember when you were like answering questions and people were like, oh my God, it's an attorney answering your questions. So you had, and your Twitter account exploded because it was like we were having this open conversation about what was going on, and we needed expertise from here and expertise from there. And Eric was, same thing with him. And me, I'm like, well, there's some organized crime going on here. Like I kind of studied this stuff. I know here. So, all these voices of expertise we have been experts for journalists before. They've talked to us. They still talk to us. We still, but what happened was, it was like the people had to rise up, and start bringing the facts forward and and find the narratives and put the narratives forward, because we weren't getting that from the Fourth Estate for how we'd all been set up. We weren't receiving that. No one was articulating the stakes of what this actually is. It's a fucking narrative warfare. We're being attacked. Our democratic processes were attacked. This man is from it. We're also like owned by now transnational organized crime lords. And so it took us coming in and articulating the stakes, and what we all saw personally, because we were bigger voices, right, entering into the fray, is this convulsion back at us, right, of like, you don't know what you are, you don't know what you're talking about, we're what you're not. And it's like, well, look, you're missing it. You're missing the fucking story.
And we kept saying it, and then Mueller comes out, and they're saying, "Oh, you see, we told you were wrong," and that was annoying.
And no one bothered to read anything. No one bothered to read the Mueller report.
Right.
None of these. A lot of these journalists did, and a lot of people didn't. We did. We did, and even
the 15 of us who did, we learned a lot.
It's just chock full of like fraud. I mean, it's like a fraud, cornucopia. It's incredible how rudimentary this enterprise they engaged in was. GoFundMe. I'm going to raise $25 million on GoFundMe to build a wall on the Mexican-American border. Which the government may have some issue with that to begin with. You're kind of usurping the power of the federal government to delineate its own borders. But let's put that aside from now. You're also kind of using this money for your own personal, I don't know, how should I say?
Cosmetic surgery, I think, at one point.
Image, your what kind of car you drive, and buying properties or buying polo shirts and popping the collar up or whatever the heck you're doing with it. It's just, how dumb are you? How brazen and just stupid argue to do something like this.
I do want to say
they're dead on this prosecution. These guys, they're done.
Oh, because there's so much more. I'm going to go into their new crimes in a bit, but I did want to say for the crowdsourced in that effort that went on Twitter, we just have to underline this, that we're all benefited from and part of, and part of this great community that found the facts of what was really going on Twitter. Are the true journalistic heroes of Trump Russia, because these hundreds of, maybe even thousands of people whose names, some of them we don't even know by name, but we would find these incredible avenues to go dig into and get every little fact about the most minute thing, and combine it and work together with other people and collaborate and slowly put together the story of Trump Russia. And they are the true, I mean, when I read the 1,000 pages of from the other day from the Senate Intelligence Committee, I was like, well, every single fact here, well, most of the facts here, the big broad facts, were already discovered by the crowdsourced community of Twitter. And they are they genuinely need to be recognized for that incredible, because it's like soccer moms. It's all about us, but it's also, it's not the people who you would think would be the heroes saving a republic, and yet they are the heroes saving.
Hair models like me.
Yeah, top
We all
earning
knew the hair
number
models.
one hair models like you.
What also needs to be said is, and working professionals.
Yeah.
So we all have jobs.
Yeah.
We
family.
have lives and families. And so this is why I get people yelling at me, what are you doing up at 3:30 in the morning? I'm like, I'm doing this, motherfuckers. What? Because I got to work too. And then I got to get my kid ready for the, school. And and then somehow now we've got the pandemic, and I'm the only one really to go out and do the shopping. And so it's like,
it's a lot of work.
That's the other side of it. I think if journalists feel like us as our voices, if we get frustrated or upset, I've got blocked because I get upset. Somebody blocked me. I wish he'd unblocked me, but it's okay. I was really bitchy to him. Oh my God, on Twitter. But it was like, aren't you a journalist? Don't you have? This is your career. You get a budget for this. You have, people helping you. You're supposed to be doing this shit, not me. And I'm doing it because you're not.
But the fact that you did it and so many other people did it is just an incredible story. I think it's just amazing that this is where the citizenry stood up, and where the Fourth Estate was failing, they were like, well, we'll do it. We'll figure it out. And
they needed us too. It was too big of a story, but.
And
the thing, what it comes down to, the basis of what it comes down to, is that we just love our country. Mm-hmm. We want our families living in a country that we grew up in, and that we can believe in, and that we can trust, and not influenced by foreign adversaries, or paid or to the highest bidder. And I mean, at least that was my motivation. I want my family safe. I want them not to have to deal with a dictatorship or the loss of freedom.
Right. It comes down to freedom.
Someone said, a number of people said this to me, and I agree with it. I mean, America's strength is in its people. And I think that's been demonstrated by a number of us who stood up, at risk of, career or, stresses with family and things of that nature. We stood up and we said, no, enough. We're going to do what we need to do to help people understand what's really going on. And I think that is a great thing.
It's an idea worth fighting for, that too. You don't see people standing up for autocracies because they're not worth fighting for. But this is one that's really worth it.
Well, didn't 20 people show up for the Lukashenko counter demonstration today? It was like 3. Most of them were his cousins or something, or people that they couldn't shoot if they didn't protest on his behalf.
Yeah, I'm sure you could get a few people together. Eric, you jump in.
And it shows you just how weak Russia really is, and how all of this were just propaganda ops, and they got a hold of the right chowderheads at the same time to pull us off here. And we weren't vigilant enough, because Putin can't even keep Belarus in line. That's his backyard. That is how fast his regime is collapsing. I mean, China China's talking about autarky. They're talking about, saving, eat all your food on your plate, because they're realizing the world is going to lock them out of financial markets and everything else. Because it's like, stop sending us your goddamn spies and stop poisoning people. And both of you, all of you, anyone part of this crew, we're not going to put up with it. And, you came for us and you didn't know who we were. We are Americans. We don't back down from this stuff. And you better get somebody better than Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner to try and take this country out.
Yeah. Let's complete this. So we're running out of time, and I just want to get to one thing. So, Steve Bannon in his most recent iteration has been running another op. This time he's been critical of China for a bunch of things with coronavirus and this weird sort of odd view of the coronavirus. Not that, some of it was accurate, but of course mixed in with a lot of craziness. And he was doing it with Mr. I don't know, I'm going to Yo Wengi. I don't know how you say that, but he's a Chinese billionaire who claims to be a dissident and anti the Chinese government, very vocal about it. But
he's serious dissident living on that, what is it, $35 million yacht.
$35 million yacht, spent 3 decades building up a fortune in real estate in China, and not once did he say anything bad about the regime while he was making all that money. Suddenly he pops up in the West and he's,
it pays well,
It pays well. And so these two guys, this is another scheme. This is a scheme that's still being investigated right now. Had set up a $300 million scheme, really, to set up what they were going to call another YouTube. They're going to set up a new YouTube. They got $300 million investors to invest in this, and of course there is no setup for a new YouTube. They had nothing. They were doing nothing. They did nothing. They did podcasts about coronavirus. And so, these investors are out there, bulked out of, $500 million each, or, some ridiculous amount of money. And this is currently being investigated right now. So if Bannon's woes weren't serious enough with the latest arrests and indictments, there's more coming. There's more coming, Steve.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to end for him. I think there's going to be a lot. He lied also, He lied to the Senate. He lied under oath. Yeah. It's going to be bad. You don't strut around and talk about Darth Vader and think that you're going to, these are the fantasy. He's also a lunatic. I mean, he's a very bad, nasty operative. He has his story has all the telltale signs of someone who's been owned by a foreign power and doing business with the bad guys for decades and decades, and slithering around in the crevices of grossness, right? Figuring out where he's going to get up in there with some money and some ops, and so he's got all that, but he's also crazy. You have to be a madman to have this life and think that it's going to work out okay for you.
Somehow he did. He seems to have associated himself with.
It's going to last longer than this guy.
He's going to retire in the Seychelles or whatever that place.
The Seychelles.
It also is worth mentioning. He is an Eric Prince partner, is he not? Like he's.
The Chinese Eric Prince Steve Bannon thing is so interesting because Eric Prince works for the Chinese. The Frontier Service Company, whatever it is called now, is actually owned by a Chinese zillionaire who is the former chairman of CITIC Group, who's very close to Xi. So there's a very close relationship, like 2 degrees of separation between Eric Prince and Xi. And then there's also the new Cambridge Analytica called Data, which Wendy Siegelman was broke. That is owned by Bannon, the Mercers, some guys from the same Chinese company, and so you can sort of see efforts in where that data went to was around this Chinese entity. It's basically a Chinese entity, and I think we're going to find out down the line that that piece of it, the Steve Bannon piece, the Eric Prince piece, was all China. And when and
you also got to look at Steve Bannon's connections to right-wing groups, far right-wing groups in Europe, which clearly have connections to RIS. Right. So we have that, and then we have the Bannon Prince and how Bannon fits into. Prince fits into the Bannon work he does with China. It's very interesting,
and there's Israel, Saudi Arabia, UAE as well. They're all in there, but it's it's a multinational group of countries that certainly had a bad skiing going, really bad skiing.
It's sort of what used to be sort of big arms deals, which Jared seems to be very happy to still be involved in these big arms deals. Still doing it, but there really has been this movement into data, right? For these sort of dark intelligence private intelligence groups, where like we're going to do within. It's all about big caches of data and owning populations,
but owning us and surveilling us and knowing everything we're doing and monitoring us so they can control their pockets of wealth. And that's how they think they can turn this into a digital dystopia. I don't know. They don't get America. They don't get America.
And
are you going to eat that
and
data?
How's that going to keep you? Yeah. What are you going to do? You're going to eat that data in that hole? Because what are they doing? What are they talking about now? What? Oh, and in your New Zealand bunker. By the way, who sold Wengi that yacht that they got? Can we just take a second and just enjoy the fact that they've been screwing with the postal service, and we didn't realize that was going to be our Thermopylae for our 300. That go no further than the postal service. We were all ready to die for the post office. No one saw that coming, and it was the Postal Investigative Service.
That arrested him. That was a good
we just luxuriate in how awesome that is.
And it's so funny. I mean, they're planning world domination on WeChat and Signal. I mean,
5 of them. A group of 5 people.
You got MSF. You got
5 of them.
All 5.
You got these idiots. Just I'm gonna. It's just incredible. I mean, it's mind-bogglingly stupid. How ridiculous these guys are.
It's like Keystone Cops. It really is. It's just a shocking display.
What are they like at the NSA? Like they're working on quantum decryption. I mean, what are they doing at NSA head? Like they're at the Puzzle Palace. They're working on Zeta scale, whatever, man, of decoding things that are 30 years from now. And they're like, no, it all comes down to 6 guys, and they've got an Atari 2600 and some walkie-talkies.
Yeah. And look, they were well funded. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of money that was thrown at this operation, and it stuck. I mean, a lot of it stuck.
Yeah.
And they're using their own iPhones. Well, I mean, they're using their own Google phones. They have billions of dollars that can go into these Saudi vehicles and whatnot, and no one can invent like a special tricked out walkie-talkie. Nobody would they no just upload this app from the Google Play Store.
Just use WhatsApp. Yeah, just use WhatsApp. Facebook, you can trust Facebook.
Yeah.
No, not even Pig Latin. Not even.
Wait, Eric, you have some. Are you still going, Zev?
No, I'm all out of material here, but we should probably end the show.
What do you think, Andy? What do you think in terms of, you were saying before the show, so I want everyone to hear it from you, because people may not know, because I do interact with Andy a lot, and so you can kind of see that, but behind the scenes, Andy's the one that I'm like, Andy, and he's like, no, calm down, it's okay. And then I can be really calm with everybody else. But behind the scenes, I'm like, I don't understand how many times can he just keep appealing these damn tax returns forever? And keep appealing this. I'm going to appeal the 3rd comma in the 2nd paragraph now. I'm appealing that shit. When does it end, Andy? So just so you guys all know, I'm just
think of it this way.
I have those freebats, but I give them to Andy. And Andy,
I appreciate that. Just think of it this way, though. The procedures that Trump and his cohorts are exploiting or taking advantage of also protect us. We want to be able to have all these appeals. We want to be able to, petition the court, whenever we feel our rights are being violated. So it's not necessarily it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's a good thing that our courts still work this way. It's a good thing that our institutions are strong and they haven't been permanently damaged or destroyed because of these WhatsApp idiots that are roaming around the halls of our government here. So, you got to look at it from that perspective. You got to look at the mirror image of it. Would you want to have the ability to do this when your rights have been violated? All right. the courts are fed up with Trump, at least on this. I'm sure they're fed up with him on a lot of things, but they're fed up with him, especially on this tax thing. It's not going to go anywhere. I highly doubt SCOTUS is going to grant cert on it. I don't. The Second Circuit rather.
What does that mean? What is cert? What does cert mean?
Grant certiorari, meaning that they'll grant permission to make an appeal to the Supreme Court. You have to file a petition for certiorari with the Supreme Court. That's what it's called. It's the fancy Latin.
Fancy words.
To certify.
Can I appeal to you? Can I appeal to you again? Is what would be asking.
Well, basically, no. I mean, a certiorari is what, let's say, a circuit court, around the country doesn't rule in your favor, and you want to petition the Supreme Court to weigh in on your matter. You have to file a petition for a writ of certiorari to get permission. You need permission to come before the court in order for your argument to be heard. And if they grant it, then hey, they may grant you a stay on any kind of legal issue that may become a nullity. If they don't grant a stay, like turning over Trump's tax returns, once the returns are out of the bag, so to speak, that's it. There's no, it's a nullity at that point because it's already, it's already been done.
I'm going to let you guys continue this conversation offline because I am not following all the details of it. But
here's the thing is, because specific to the tax returns. So Trump didn't appeal.
We've got 1 minute. We really are late today.
He keeps appealing, and people are like, when is this going to end? When are they just going to say, no, you have to release it?
The second, so it looks like it's a good sign. Let me just say this. The good sign is Second Circuit did not grant a stay, okay? That's a good sign, and then it's going to be heard later. The petition is going to be heard later on, I think, in the month or next month. I highly, and Vance can move in there and say, hey, compel production of this stuff, and he's going to have to produce it. I don't think SCOTUS is going to grant a stay either for Trump to be able to perfect his appeal to the Supreme Court. That means that by the time all these appeals get filed, it's going to be too late because Vance is going to have all these documents because it's going to move to compel them. The court's going to order it.
Interesting.
I hope you follow that.
Interesting. I did follow that. I did follow that.
All we want to know is there a point where he hits a brick wall and he has to do it?
Yes, and it was. And Andy said it today, 9 hours ago. I'm looking at his timeline right now. His next thing is to challenge the judge to a Big Mac eating contest. Because that's what he's doing. Mr. Laufer?
That's what's going to happen.
Boy, this has been a terrific show. I love you guys. Thank you very much for coming on. And I learned so much today. LB, your resource on Steve Bannon is quite phenomenal. I'm impressed.
Oh,
she's badass. He knows a lot of stuff.
One of my guys in there. I got the Mark Burnett and I got the Steve Bannon. And I've been watching and tracking them for a long time.
We did see a lot of action this week. It looks like things are going down. And after this many, many years, it's good to see. Let's go quick final thoughts. Eric? Or not? I love doing that to Eric. LB?
That's it.
Tell us about your jersey super quick. You're wearing that jersey.
Oh, the Islanders.
No, this is the St. Louis Blues.
This is how much I know sport.
Yeah, the current champions. Joe Biden was talking about something his mama told him about bullies. That when he got bullied, to go out and bloody their noses. And I think the theme going forth, you had a fake tough guy who would make fun of people with handicaps, right? And now we have a real man who's running for president, a real adult who's not owned by foreign intelligence services. And he's at one end of the spectrum, you've got him being just incredibly sweet to a kid who like him has a stutter and gets up in front of the nation, and he's going to take care of that kid and give him dignity and give him a starring role in the narrative that we tell ourselves that no, we are good to people that are different. We are good to people that are afraid that they're not going to be accepted. No, they're part of us. They're just like us, and that doesn't come from the middle or the bottom. That comes from the guys on top. That's our leadership. And and he's sweet to the elevator lady who gets to nominate him and says, "That's my friend Joe Biden." That's on one end, and on the other end is my mama also told me when I see bullies, hit them in the nose and make them bleed. And I love that bookend, because we're not going to be super sweet coming out of this. We're going to be sweet to the people and give comfort to the people that need it. And a lot of people need it. And if you are our enemies, you're going to lose sleep tonight. And I love that.
I love that too. On that note, I'll leave you with some. Oh, go for it, Andrew.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all I'm going to say is his truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Mm-hmm. The terrible swift sword. It's coming.
It is coming. And on that note,
going to prison, Andy. Is
that traitor
going to prison?
They're all
You're going to prison, traitor.
And here's Joe Biden from last night to take us out.
This is our moment to make hope and history rhyme with passion and purpose. Let us begin, you and I together, one nation, under God, united in our love for America, united in our love for each other. For love is more powerful than hate, hope is more powerful than fear, and light is more powerful than dark. This is our moment, this is our mission.
Support Narrative's independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative, and check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe and download.